Hello, my name is Laura, and I'm going to be doing my presentation on children of transnational families. So the trend of Mexican parents leaving their children behind in Mexico to the U.S. Is largely due to the reason that they want to better support their family and wives or husbands if they left them behind in Mexico as well, financially. And that's been growing a lot in the past few decades. Due to this transnational separation, children of these parents are victim to a wide range of negative emotions. So in this presentation, I'm going to be covering the rationality behind the parents leaving their children behind in Mexico, the feelings and experiences of these children who feel like their parents just left them and they don't really know why, the migration process of children from Mexico to the US and its significance, and the fear of deportation and transnational experiences between US citizens and deported family members. So, how parents rationalize leaving their children behind is that it is for financial stability. It can be really difficult to explain that to their child, that they're just leaving for an indefinite amount of time. So a lot of the time children don't understand whether they're young children, pre-adolescents, or adolescents. So jobs in the US do typically pay better. So that is why the children or the parents leave to the United States. So like I mentioned, this does have impacts on children without having lived enough life to understand compassion, sacrifice to parental responsibility fully. They sometimes have trouble understanding or comprehending why their parents left. So even into their teenage years, they might feel hurt, confused, and disappointed. And these children will demonstrate they'll act out in different ways because of the separation from their parents. So in a study done by Drubby in 2007, she kind of observed how pre-adolescent children and adolescent children act differently. So pre-adolescent children, I kind of covered this in my presentation during class, but there are four main ways. Naming, which is just calling their caregiver by like mommy or mama, instead of calling their actual mothers that. Feigning indifference, where their children might act indifferent. Parental authority deferred, because the caregivers are caring for them full time. Children might not ask the parents for permission, which might offend them, especially the fathers. And lastly, refusing to migrate. Children feel attached to their caregivers or to their home, and they don't want to move to a brand new country where they don't understand the language, they don't know anybody, including their parents, and they don't want to leave home. With adolescent children, they experience things and kind of understand things a little differently. So there's ambiguous lines of authority. So often they have high levels of freedom when they're just home with caregivers because they tend to be more lenient. But when they're not lenient, they will ask their parents for permission, even though they might be thousands of miles away. They also act out, and they might act aggressively toward their peers, to their siblings, maybe to their caregivers, maybe even to their parents, over the phone. And they want that discipline. They want their parents and especially their mothers to tell them that they can't do things. And because they're not getting that discipline, they act out even more out of frustration. There's also a drop in school performance. Oftentimes, children become depressed after their parents leave, so they might not feel as motivated to do as good in school. And another reason is caregivers who are typically older might not know how to read or write, so they literally cannot help their grandchild in school. So in many cases, parents want to move their children up to the United States, and once they raise enough money, they will do that. And sometimes, like I mentioned, children are strongly opposed to that. They want to stay home, and sometimes they are excited to finally reunite with their parents. So this transnational passage to the U.S. Is really significant for a few different reasons. So it's very gendered in how they kind of perceive boys and girls coming up to the U.S. For boys, it's encouraged to migrate. It's like a rite of passage. With girls, it's a lot more controlled and constrained just because it is a dangerous journey. Furthermore, many Mexican children feel connected to their culture. They don't want to lose that connection when they come up to the United States. So they'll draw, quote, on rituals in their community being a safe space to help them forge a positive Mexican identity in adolescence. So some of these safe spaces might be youth groups, folkloric dance groups, or activities relating to their Catholic or Mexican heritage. So the battle definitely isn't over once everyone comes up to the United States, especially when at least one, most of the time more, are undocumented. The fear of deportation definitely looms over the family. Migrant parents and children come to the US without any legal documents, and they're constantly reminded of that, whether the children can't apply for college or scholarships, or they can't get a driver's license. Their fear of being forcibly removed from the country is terrifying, especially for the parents who might feel like they are going to lose custody over their kids and things like that. As of 2020, 26.6 million Latino U.S. citizen adults live with 4.8 million non-citizens, and 17.3 million Latino U.S. citizen children live with 7.7 million non-citizens. This never-ending fear of losing one's parents and the actual event of having a child lose their parent or parents does have severe impacts on the child and family as a whole, as you can imagine. In a different Drebby article that I found, she explains that children who's lost a parent due to deportation have shown increased frequency of crying, loss of appetite, sleeplessness, clingy behavior, an increase in fear and anxiety, and generic fears of law enforcement officials. Men or like fathers are often the breadwinners in the family, and they're also the ones who are most of the time being deported. So when fathers get deported, the wives and women often have to become the breadwinners, and in the circumstance they can't rely on unemployment benefits or workers' compensation, so they are having to find financial means in different ways, even though they're already surviving on such low wages. There's also major changes in childcare. When there's not two parents in the household, older siblings have to take on the responsibility of taking care of their younger siblings. So in conclusion, undocumented children are heavily affected by transnational separation from themselves and parents in the US and their new lives once they migrate to the United States, and potential deportation of US children's parents or other family members back to Mexico. Children, both pre-adolescent and adolescent, react to their parents' decision to leave in various ways, thus affecting their mental health and interpersonal behavior. Mexican children's migration to the US is heavily gendered, and they like to connect with their Mexican heritage by joining communities of like-minded people. Also, the threat of deportation is also forever looming above families with undocumented family members. Thank you.